Character designs are often the first thing that we notice in any piece of media, and a good design is really the deciding factor on whether we continue consuming that media or not. After all, why would you continue watching a show or reading a book if you found the characters boring or unlikable? And it's often the first thing that we do in regards of creating something, whether it's a kid making a drawing of a robotic figure with laser eyes or something, or someone making a slightly more serious thing for a project like a comic or an animation. With that being said, when beginners start out, you're not really sure how to make a compelling character design that fits in the scheme that you want and doesn't read off as a Mary Sue or a YN fanfic written on Wattpad. So, it brings the question, what do you keep in mind when making a character design? With that being said, I would like to preface this by saying I have zero, and I mean zero professional or formal education in what I'm about to say, but considering that I've been working with this for some time, I've managed to pick up at least some things that I feel are important. And with that being said, let's start. Now, I feel the main aspects that are required for character design can be distributed into three things: the purpose, your vibe, and your visuals. Now, let's start with purpose. Is essentially dictating what you are using your character for. Now, this is important in regards to the effort or whatever thought process that goes behind your character design. If your purpose is simply some challenge, an art challenge, or an art video, and it's not long term use, then that makes the requirements that you have to go for the design different than to whether it's a serious project that you actually need to plan out. And now, common advice that you see everywhere almost is that you should make your character designs simpler. And while yes, this makes your drawing process easier and quicker and more efficient, it really again depends on your purpose. If you're only making this character design once for your life for some challenge or a YouTube video, then you don't really need to care about that to that much of an extent. But if you're making it for a bigger project, for example a gag comic, or it's an animation in which you have to draw the same little things over and over again, you should prioritize your own mental sanity because you don't want to burn yourself out. That's why there needs to be a perfect balance between details and purposeful aspects, such as lore if that's what you're going for. But again, this is for bigger projects. For if you're only making this character design once or twice, then it doesn't really care. And while I have zero patience for extremely precise details and really can't be bothered to have such an art style, it's fine for me to sacrifice some sort of preciseness or some sort of detailedness into my character designs. And this is specific to your art style. If you have the patience to do that for repeated amounts of time, then sure, go on. No one can really physically stop you. Secondly, we move on to vibes, which I'm aware is a vague description, but hear me out. Now, human brains are funny things, and they love seeking out patterns and associating patterns with different, seemingly unrelated things. Now, this is why we associate certain personality traits, habits, or hobbies onto certain cliches or assumptions with people. That's the same thing that we do with a character we see. The vibe of a character often makes or breaks our personal view on the said character. Like how you can hate an annoying character more than someone who's honestly a literal criminal, probably only because of the way they're written. Now, this helps us create characters by giving us either lore information or visual information, which helps create an image in the viewer's mind, which basically means their backstory or the way they look. Visually, this can be the things they wear, the things they carry around, the type of clothes that they like. And if you need help with this, take inspiration from your favorite media artists, people you know, or even yourself. Same for lore information. Take these aspects of lore or these aspects like hobbies or even small, seemingly unneeded details to make an image of a character that really resonates in someone's mind. This ties back to purpose because if your character design is for a short term thing, you don't need to necessarily put that much effort in your backstory or internal monologue or anything like that unless you really want to. And again, on the topic of inspiration, it can literally be from anywhere. It can be from real life, it can be from your favorite show, your favorite anime, your favorite anything. It can be from random people you see and you like their clothes, the random people you don't even know or people you do know. You can copy paste your best friend, and really no one in your audience would know, or if they did, they wouldn't really care to that extent. Now, this will help you make more real sounding characters instead of 2D, but keep in mind you can use cliches. And while that seems stereotypical, cliches do work. They are ingrained in our brains for some reason. And while it can help in making a 2D character and it not necessarily a 3D fleshed out one, they are a starting point nonetheless. With that, we go on to our last point. Last but not the least, my favorite, visuals. Now, visuals itself can be further categorized into shape and color. Now, as I said before, our brain loves patterns. This also, apart from things like personality traits, it also stems to shapes. Stuff like softer shapes, harsher shapes, we can uh, link those with certain personality traits, or we can link them names. Why do you think there's an experiment in which people have been gotten to name two different shapes? Because this is a thing that our brain does. Now, what this means is essentially more bubbly, soft traits are given to rounder shapes, and impulsive, energetic, or dangerous traits to harsh, sharp shapes. So, in a design, your usage of shapes is made by contrasting. Now, this can mean different things. Their hair can be really rounded, really circular shapes, and the rest of them harsher shapes, or it can be a blend of both. And this contrast is what brings us to silhouette. Silhouettes or your shapes help define different characters from one another. If you look at your characters and you're wondering why is it that sometimes they're not standing out, it could be the colors or it could be your shapes. If characters, look alike in their shapes or their silhouettes, this can be harder to differentiate between them. Or you can use that to make them virtually non-differentiable. But about that later. Now, in a design, you can make your silhouette more interesting by different ways, and it's depending on your art style. Because if your art style is more stylistic, then it's easier to make a really exaggerated silhouette because you can bump up the proportions, you can really play with the proportions in a way that's not humanly possible nor is encouraged by the laws of physics. But if you have a more realistic or semi-realistic art style and you can't really do this, then I would suggest that you can do this via changing their body shapes, or you can change their clothing styles. So while this can be done by overall different clothings, different hair, you know, at least have your main characters differentiable by their silhouettes. Because I don't think that in a large scale project you really need to concentrate that much on your background character silhouettes more than your main ones. Now we come into the second half of visuals, your colors. Now, colors, I adore color symbolism, which some of you may have heard in regards to films or media or some random Twitter post ranting about how the color symbolism in some new Netflix show is wonderful or whatever. But let me explain it to you. Now, I don't have the time to fully go over each and every color, but in essence, different colors give us different assumptions, like shapes do, and like vibes do. For example, stuff like how villains in a lot of pieces of media are associated with black or dark brooding colors, or how white can be used in sci-fi for sterile environments, or white can also be used for purity, and not, and so on, so on, so on. When you make a character's color palette, I would suggest limiting yourself. Go for maybe a monochromatic scheme, or maybe complementary colors, or maybe 3 or 4. Maybe just have 2 colors but different variations of the hue. But while you can go for a really colorful, really hyper popish design, the problem with that is if you're starting out and that's you just jumping straight to making that, you won't understand how to make those go complementary to each other. That's why if you start from a limited color scheme first and then you slowly see what you like or see what goes, you can learn how to add more and more colors in a way that doesn't make your eyes bleed, unless that is what you're trying to achieve. Now, if I were to go over the colors or the main colors that I feel of some of my main characters, I would say, for example, here the main color would be orange and blue, which are again complementary colors. Here, orange can mean a lot of things. It can mean friendliness, it means courage, it can mean other things. Blue is associated with a lot of things. It can be stability, it can also be sadness, but nonetheless, let's digress. Here we also have blue. Here we have darker shades of blue with grays. Now, grays can mean a lot of things as well. They can mean carelessness, they can mean calmness, they can also mean dull, and blues can also mean depression alongside stuff like wisdom and authority. Yellows and greens. Yellows, while they're also somewhat unsettling, they can also mean energetic optimism, and green, while they also mean envy, they can also mean stuff like growth and luck. Now, let's move to my main character. Now, if I were to look at her main colors that I feel actually matter would be red, blue, and yellow. Now, yellow is the least of the proportion. Black here is only existing as a color that I used because I didn't know what else to keep. Now, red in this case, while it can also mean passion and excitement, it can also mean rage and aggression, which she has a lot of. And blue, while it can mean stability, tranquility, and so on, it can also mean sadness. So it sort of lessens the rage from most of the red here. And if we look at yellow, there's very little of it unless in certain scenarios, and yellow in this case really is simply used for unsettledness and madness. And black, again, just a neutral color, but it can also mean stuff like fear, hopelessness, where I simply didn't know what to put instead of black here, so there's not else I much I can say. Once again, for this, please use inspiration. It can be color palettes, it can be some image that you turn into a palette because you like the colors, it can be media characters, so on. Now you can always use these things like your color symbolism or your shapes to portray an image of your character that is not exactly how the character is. Now this is something that you'd settle on after tinkering with your design to a point you get happy with, which again you can only do when you let yourself make different variations and let your design evolve. And they do evolve. If you are making a design for a serious thing like a comic or any project that you are really invested in, please note that your first design is not going to be your last. If I saw my first designs for my characters now, they would look vastly different. And it has taken me ages to get to a point with my characters where I am happy mostly with where they've been. And really, you can only tell when you're happy with a design yourself. People can't really help you in this. This is just something you have to decide by your own discretion. And that's really all I have to say on character designing. This video was originally intended to be a 1K subscriber special, but if you scroll down you can see that we are certainly past the 1K point, and I proposed this idea way back in June of last year. So it's been an year since this, and while I did not intend on it being an year since I actually made this video, stuff happened. I've really been jam-packed with stuff and burnt out and had art block for multiple months, and this feels nice to finally have gotten this out so I can concentrate on giving actual content and more animatics and actually concentrate on the comic. So if you really want to see more content from me, please subscribe. I have links to my Insta in the bio, as well as an unveil link. I think that would be how you say it. I'm not sure. But if you did enjoy it, please like or subscribe. And genuinely, thank you. I did not really see it getting to a point there's more than 1,000 people actually watching my stuff. So thank you, and well, happy designing.